Good morning, all. Thanks for joining us this fine morning. I am Vanessa from Hazico, and I'm really happy to be hosting today's session with Brad Parker from Mates in Construction and our partners also from Build Exact. So fantastic to have members from both Hazico and Build Exact attending today. Brad is Mates in Construction and doing some amazing work in raising awareness for mental health issues, and particularly in the construction industries. Brad's the current CEO for Mates in Construction New South Wales, and Brad is absolutely happy to take questions throughout today. So you'll notice on the right-hand side of your screen, there is a chat function. I will go hiding and let Brad take the show from here, but I'll be monitoring the Q&A. So I'll be able to give Brad some audio on the questions available in the session. So please feel free to get in there. And hi Matthew, thanks for saying hello. So I will pass it over to Brad for this session, and I will hide myself so you won't see my face anymore, but I will pop up here and there with some questions where they come in through the chat. So we'll pass it over to you, Brad.
Thank you, Vanessa, and great to be here. And I want to thank Hazico and Build Exact for inviting me to speak. And I just want to say from the outset, we are going to be talking about suicide. So we are going to be talking about a tough subject and mental health. So if anyone, I can talk about the lived experience and I'll come back to that in a minute. But if anyone needs to leave for whatever purpose, if you need to go to the bathroom or need to take a call or whatever, can you just give us the thumbs up on the chat box, but that you're okay? Otherwise, we will try and check in with people. Mates don't normally do their training certainly over the airwaves like this. It's normally face to face, and we always have two trainers simply because sometimes we don't try to trigger people or impact them, but some people do get impacted. I don't know what's going on in your personal life. And today might not be your day, to listen to this, so you can tune out now if you wanted to. But look, I'm not going to make it too heavy, but I think that we need to address the issues of suicide in the industry. So I was going to kick off by saying I acknowledge anybody with a lived experience of suicide. I'm sorry for your loss. But hopefully today, and please don't do the woulda, coulda, shoulda, or the what ifs. If you've missed the signs in the past, we know that even the best of the mental health professionals miss the signs. So, it's a thing that we can't always see coming. Sometimes we just can't save everyone. But today, hopefully, I'm going to give you some tips about what you can take away, what we essentially train on site within the workplace, and you may be able to take those tools back with you today and maybe just use them in general life. And we often say Mates in Construction is not just a workplace program, it's a community program, because what we train people in, they take back to their loved ones, family, friends, their community, and they spread the word, which is a good thing. So I was going to start off with some pretty hard-hitting stats. If you don't already know, we lose a building and construction worker every second day to suicide in this country. They're 8 times more likely to die by suicide than a workplace accident. But one of the, I can talk statistics all day, but how Mates got established was out of the most comprehensive report or study ever done into any industry in the world, and was done here in Australia at Griffith University in Queensland. And it was called the ASRAP report, ASRAP being an acronym for the Australian Institute of Suicide Research and Prevention. And what they found was, amongst many things, we had a disproportionate rate of suicide to the rest of the country. But they found also that 93% of building and construction workers who had suicided in the past never sought professional help. So they either didn't know where to find help, they didn't want to, or the big one was they weren't encouraged to. So how do we get them there? How do we get them to the clinicians? How do we get them to the psychologists, the psychiatrists, or even the counselling service? what do we do? And essentially, Mates was built on the back of that, on that little bit of research that was so important. So the Mates program, to tell you about how that sort of works, it's a multifaceted, multimodal program that was acknowledged, by the way, in 2021 by the World Health Organization as being world's best practice in this space, an example of world's best practice. And who would have thought that a blue collar industry like building and construction workers would have been leading the world in this space? And I can't say that's exactly me or my staff. I think it was a collective effort of the industry coming together. And I quite often say that mental health and suicide can be complex, but they may not be so complex to fix. The most important commodity we have in our industry is our people. And maybe the answer lies within our people. And so I just want to talk about how we, going forward, how the program works. Essentially, it's set up for training and support. One without the other would be insufficient. As a matter of fact, doing training without support can be dangerous, because you can trigger people and they need that support. We have a 24/7 helpline. You can see behind me, 1300 642 111. That's like Lifeline for building and construction workers and their families. And it can be for any matter. It can be that they just want to get something off their chest. It may not be that they're suffering from a mental health issue, or they're raising issues of suicidality or suicidation or whatever. It is a helpline for you to ring at any time for any purpose. So if you're from the industry, we encourage you to call that number 24/7, and you can speak to our people, as well as we outsource after hours to another group who's very good at doing what they do. But we're always following up with case managers following up people afterwards. We're also evidence-based, which is very important. The research informs about what the Mates program looks like and how it keeps its integrity, as well as keeps us all honest. We have a national academic reference group, which is made up of professors and doctors from universities right across the country. And they're particularly good at what they do. I lovingly refer to them as the nerd squad because they're all nerds, but maybe I'm wrong about that. They're not so nerdy. I've been out to dinner with them once and I had them down as nerds, but I think they're just party animals. But anyway, they're a good mob to work with, and they're always looking at what sort of research that we need to sort of make our program relevant. And we have case management, and the case management role is so important because they will take up and they'll speak to, like the light touch of counselling, I guess. They'll speak to our clients. They will talk to them about where they want to take their problem or where they might want to take their issues. They'll give them a whole raft of options, and then they will say, how would you like to approach it? Where would you like to take it? Which I think is a great way of dealing with it. But then they keep following up to ensure that they get the connection, because we know that sometimes we don't connect, people don't connect to the first person they're dealing with. So we want to ensure that they're getting the support that they actually need. And that's why it works, I guess. And that's why it was acknowledged by the WHO as being a program. And so I guess getting to the points of what we're looking for. So we have 3 streams of training: general awareness training. That normally goes for 45 minutes to an hour. And that's on site. That can be anywhere from 20 participants to 500 in one sitting. Look, obviously getting over 100 is a bit more difficult, and on building sites, and we wear all the high vis go on site. I do as well. I mean, I love to keep my hand in on the training, and it gives me an ear to the ground about what's happening, because we are boots on the ground, right? And that's what sort of sets us apart from other sort of mental health suicide prevention programs, that we're actually active on the ground dealing with these issues every day. But what we start off with the general awareness training, 45 minutes to an hour. In that training, we then ask for volunteers to go that next step to our connector training. And connector is 4 hours, and that's about a deeper conversation about how do you keep someone safe while connecting them to support? And we've got well over, I was just having a look at our latest numbers, and I think that we're probably behind on these numbers. We're on general awareness training right across the country here in Australia, and we do have mates in construction in New Zealand. Those people listening in, if they're from New Zealand, and I'll talk more about how mates has spread its wings throughout, starting to look internationally, but also within other industries. So just in mates in construction in Australia, over 300,000 people we've conducted general awareness training with. And that's over, mates have existed in New South Wales for 10 years, in Queensland it's been 15 years. That's where it was established in Queensland. We're looking at about 30,000, over 30,000 connectors now. So they're all volunteers that have done the connector training of 4 hours. And then assist trained. Assist is applied suicide intervention skills training. So essentially suicide first aid. And we have well over 3,500 assist trained. We've got nearly 14,000 people that we've had under case management. So we're really getting out there and getting amongst it. The assist, I often say, if you're 8 times more likely to suicide than die from a workplace accident, why don't we have, suicide first aiders on site? And essentially that's what assist is. We've got, physical first aiders everywhere on building and construction sites. However, we may be looking at that little bit of, that statistic or that bit of research that tells us that we maybe need to be more aware around suicide. So we are dealing with the pointy end of mental health being suicide and working our way back. Happy to explain some of the more practical ways about what we do. Vanessa, is there any questions at this stage? Enough Vanessa's there.
Sorry, Brad.
No, that's right.
Had an issue. Not at this stage through the chat, but please do ask any questions throughout the session, and I'll definitely interrupt you, Brad, and let you know.
Okay, good. So I guess the first thing we're looking for is what we want to know about, or what we do know about the person. We think that people in our industry spend more time at work with their work colleagues, their workmates, than they do with their loved ones, families, or friends. So we think that they're best placed to pick up the signs, right? So we're looking at what we might know about them if they've had some sort of loss in their life, loss of a relationship, loss of a loved one, a loss of a family member, loss of employment, loss of dignity, loss of a pet. These things impact on people. So some sort of loss. And then we're looking for the changes. So what changes have they experienced or you've been able to pick up? When they're coming into work late, they might be hitting the grog hard. There might, mood changes. There might be something going on there. They might be a bit distant like the building and construction worker who played cards in the crib room, the lunch shed every lunchtime, removed himself, went and had lunch in the car. After the third day he suicides, all the blokes on site said, we didn't know that meant suicide. Maybe on reflection, we should have tapped on that car window and said, mate, what's going on with you? You okay? So sometimes we don't know, we miss the signs, It might be the apprentice who is running around paying back everybody for their coffees or squaring his ledger for debts before he attempted suicide, or it might even be the project manager who was giving away his golf clubs. I won't be needing these, you can have them. Did anybody think to ask why he was giving away his golf clubs? Or trigger warning, this one, the building and construction worker's wife who wanted a chest freezer. He said, you got a perfectly good freezer in the fridge, but he relented, he purchased the chest freezer. 2 days after she suicided, he went to that chest freezer, he opened it up, and what he found was 3 months worth of meals prepared for him and the kids with cooking instructions. Who knew that meant suicide? So we don't always spot the signs, they can be hidden and cryptic. However, going forward, so we're looking at some sort of loss in their life, we've noticed some changes, and now it's things you might sense or hear. I often say when I'm conducting the training to building and construction workers, we're talking about the F word, feelings. Do building and construction workers really have feelings? I think they do. And, you know, we sort of, you know, loneliness, like nobody tells you, it's very rare that they'll tell you that they're lonely. But we're looking for stuff like hopelessness, escape, depressed, burden. Now, nobody speaks like that. Nobody speaks like, I need to escape this depressive loneliness and burden. We don't talk like Shakespeare. But they do start talking negatively. They'll say stuff like, everything I do just turns to crap. Maybe my family's better off without me. You know, all these sorts of problems. So you've had a loss in their life. We've noticed the changes. Now they're talking negatively. It's a gut feeling. If it doesn't sit well with you, you know, should we sort of working on that gut feeling, doing something about it? 10 seconds of courage to call it out. 10 seconds. That's all it takes. I've noticed, you know, I know this about you. I know you've had some sort of loss in your life. I've noticed the changes. Now you're talking negatively. Maybe I can stick with you and get you some help, you know. So it's a bit simple, a bit simplistic, but it does work. One of the things we do in Connector is we ask that very confronting question. Very difficult for me when I first started this role, but it's second nature to me now. But you ask that very confronting question: are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about killing yourself? And we have to be direct and honest. We can't be indirect. We can't say you're not, you know, like something like you're not thinking about killing yourself, are you? Or you're not thinking about suicide. That gives them an out. We have to be direct with our language, and we have to be spot on. And why do we have to ask that question? Because we have to triage them. We need to know, do we need to call the ambulance now, or do we just need to get them a little bit of support? You know, so we need to know where we're going with this. And then we've got to stick with them. And, you know, we talk about the Mates Helpline. Well, giving a building and construction worker a helpline number and hoping that they call it is not going to cut it. Let's be honest. We're going to have to sit with them. We're going to have to talk them through it. You know, quite often I'll get project managers or, you know, a worker on site or whoever saying to me, you know, oh, mate, he's not doing so well. I'll get you to call him. No, we can't call them. We need their express permission. What works well is you sit with them and you talk them through and you get them to call that helpline. And when I say to people why they have to call the helpline, we know that they're in our system then and that they're being dealt with. If we don't, you know, if we do it another way, it's more difficult, and we don't want to lose anybody to, you know, somebody missing something. We often say nobody gets forgotten about on our watch, and we're always following up people. So there's a couple of ways. So in Connector, we do ask that very difficult question, and then we go through more rigid program of how we then take it further and how we can help those people. And I think by what you're seeing the Mates program then, what we try to do is we bring together the workforce to be doing the job for everyone. So we create those, I guess a whole cohort of carers within the industry working for each other. And that's why it works. And, you know, several employers in the industry say to me, we just can't believe how good this program works. You know, it's one thing looking at psychosocial hazards. It's another thing, having the measures in place, but by utilising the most important component, the workers themselves, we're actually being able to break some ground there, and we've got everybody on alert, looking out for each other. And if you think the Mates program stops at that, it doesn't. I often say, you know, I believe, and we're yet to do this bit of research because it's probably hard to measure, but I've been asking the National Academic Reference Group to look at it. I think it goes way further. It talks about, because what it does, it creates a better morale on site. I believe it improves productivity. It certainly increases safety, because if your mind's not on the job, you're not only a risk to yourself, but everybody else working around you. And that's what it does. Now, I guess getting back to the industry, Vanessa, you want to cut in there?
I do have a question before you move too much further on.
Yep.
Luke has asked, how many hours/days does the suicide first aid course run for?
Oh, right. So that's 2 days. I didn't explain that. Sorry. So it's a 2-day course. Yeah. Very
Excellent.
intense. Very intense. I think it's the best bit of training I've ever done, but I'm pretty biased. But it is really good life skills. And I know that some people have probably done mental health first aid. There is a bit of a difference. And that's a 2-day course as well, generally. But the assist is more dealing with practical type skills about what you actually have to do and putting a safe plan together to ensure that the person that we're dealing with is going to be dealt with properly.
Excellent. And anyone who's interested in doing that, Brad, I'm assuming they just go to the website?
Yeah, go to mates.org.au. Absolutely. Have a look at, the assist is it's not as frequent. I think we've got one coming up next week in New South Wales, but they're not as frequent as the other training sessions. Obviously, we do about 4 to 5 assists a year. You can do that through Living Works as well, though, we use part of the Living Works program, Safe Talk, and you can also go to Living Works. You can look them up. Yeah, so it's not as frequent, but it's a 2-day course. So yeah.
Excellent. And there's just a general comment. It's not a question, but maybe you have some thoughts around it. Stuart mentioned that blokes don't talk about it, so it's always harder to recognise the signs, whereas females tend to chat to their girlfriends, and so the signs are easier. And then there was some agreements there from Ricky Lee. So is there anything that maybe you could talk around that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start from the start. I'm married to a very tough Croatian woman who we lovingly refer to as a general. I have 4 sons and 2 dogs. They're all scared of the general. She refers to the 4 sons as the weapons of mass consumption. They're always eating her cooking. I am married to the best cook in Australia. When I showed her the stats, I showed her overall, so right across Australia, we're not talking construction now, we're talking everywhere. On average, we lose somebody to suicide, 9 people a day to suicide in this country. Can you believe it's that high? Now, if we're losing 9 people a day to shark attack, the community would be outraged, right? Why aren't we outraged about this? But when you cut it down and you get into, and we don't try to get into the gender stuff. The gender stuff's so important. I'll tell you why in a minute. It is 75% of males at suicide compared to 25% of females. It's normally always around that. And when I first showed that to the general, I said, why do you think it looks like that? She said, well, that's really simple. You blokes are crap communicators. She said, when the weapons walk in the front door after work, I'm lucky to get a grunt out of them. And then she went on to say, women are just far too busy to contemplate suicide. Not completely true, that last one, right? However, this is what I've got to deal with the general, right? But look, there's a hidden statistic. Women actually attempt suicide more and self-harm more than men. But men use a more lethal means. It's pretty final when they do it, right? But men are really bad. Not all men, it's probably a generalization, but we are bad at communicating our emotional issues. Women are very good at communicating their emotional issues. They're very good at networking, and they're very good at digging deeper if they don't like the answer. Us blokes, you'll say, how you going, mate? He's no good, right? And you go, oh, yeah, I'm all right, mate. Oh, okay, good. Leave it at that. We'd rather talk about the footy or what's on YouTube or, what's happening in the news or whatever, rather than talk about our emotional stuff. So I often say that the feminists in the industry quite like me because I often talk about if we, a higher participation of women within our industry is needed because at the very least they can actually save lives. Is there any better reason to get more women involved in the construction sector? So, and I think they do play a vital role. I think women do play a vital role, and that's so good. I'm glad. Who was it that raised the question? Sorry,
Stuart.
Good question, Stuart. Magnificent. So that's the reason why, So we do have to recognise the gender stuff that happens, and about how women can play a vital role. And it's quite often that women put their hand up straight away for connector, and they're brilliant connectors. Absolutely brilliant. So us blokes can learn from the women that we work with and the women that we have at home.
Thanks for that, Brad.
So I guess the other big elephant in the room is people say to me, why does the construction industry lend itself to suicide so easily? Well, good. This is a good question, right? We've got research to tell us. I mean, there's a number of things. Long working hours, bullying behaviours, a culture and not allowing discussion of problems with our peers, right? So if you've got a worker who's going through a child custody dispute and a relationship issue, they're coming to work. Do you think that we make them feel comfortable about talking about their emotional stuff? Or are they worried about copying, harden up, princess, have a cup of concrete? There's other stuff as well. We have this thing in our contracts called liquidated damages. It's a term that's used for financial penalties if you don't reach milestones on a job site within a particular time. So the pressure is always there and then handed down all the way down to those people on the ground. And but that's not to say a labourer has experienced some pressure and some difficulty with their emotional stuff, as well as the project director maybe as well, right? But that is quite unique to our industry, having that sort of contract, and how the financial penalties can impact on a construction site with safety issues and mental health. But the other big one is that job insecurity. So the life of the project is as good as the life of the job. We're thinking, have we got a job to go to? It is the only industry in the world that I know of where we work ourselves so hard to work ourselves out of a job. You think about it. So these are quite unique to our industry, and that's probably why it doesn't lend itself well to mental health. However, I've got to say from the outset, right, there is hope, real hope. And I often say, you might be able to go a couple of days without water, a few more days without food, but you can't live 1 second without hope. We're the hope. We bring hope to the industry here. We know through life-saving interventions that we can really make an impact, and we are making an impact. And we know that we've got research that tells us that, we've reduced suicides by about 7.8%. Started from a low base, right? Let's be honest. But we are making an impact. And that's a real part of the hope story. And whilst we spread it, while we do it, we serve to make a difference. And we often say, mates helping mates might be a cheesy throwaway statement. It's not really. It's actually real and tangible, and it does work. So mates helping mates making a difference, and being stronger together. It's something that we live by, and we believe we are making a difference. So I guess Nellie rounds it up. I've probably got one last quick story that sort of gels together what happens with the Mates program. And, what it is we've got an area in Sydney. It's a very Sydney-centric story, an area in Sydney called Watson's Bay. It's a beautiful part of Sydney that overlooks Sydney Harbour. At Watson's Bay, there's a geographical cliff face called the Gap. And some people might know the Gap as being an area that unfortunately people have gone to suicide over the years, the decades. And living across the road from the Gap was a gentleman by the name of Don Ritchie. Don Ritchie was not a mental health professional. He was not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. He wasn't even a counselling service. He had a background in the Australian Navy. He was an engineer by trade. But Don Ritchie would be outraged by what he'd see. He'd see the police rescue turn up. He'd see the ambulance turn up. A couple of days later, he'd see people who'd lost loved ones to suicide placing wreaths of flowers at the cliff face. So he decided to do something about it. If he saw someone standing there on their own, he would walk across the road calmly, non-threateningly, simply engage in a conversation, invite them back to his home for a cup of tea, a coffee, or even a beer. He would keep them safe while connecting them to support. They estimate that Don Ritchie saved over 200 lives. Don Ritchie can do it, we all can do it, right? So thank you for allowing me to speak, and I'm going to allow more time for people to ask questions. There might be something I missed. I'm happy to answer anything.
Just struggling with the microphone. We've had this one come through privately, so I won't say their name in case they don't want it announced. But the question is, how do we break through the silence from men about their mental health? Do we ask open-ended questions or building rapport to make them feel more comfortable to open up?
Yeah, certainly building a rapport to make them feel more comfortable. So part of the reason why we have the volunteer, not voluntold, with the connectors is because we need those people within the workplace to feel comfortable about going to someone about their really private, confidential, and we talk about privacy and confidentiality, private and confidential sort of stuff that's going on with them, but they really need to feel comfortable. So that's the first part. So that's why the connector thing seems to work, right? Because it may be that you might not feel comfortable going to your HS&E wellbeing manager, but you do feel comfortable about talking to your colleague that you talk about the footy about all the time, or whatever, right? So getting them to open up, can be a difficult conversation. Sometimes we say to people, there might be in a workplace that they have a particular problem with one person they're really worried about. They're not taking on the help. They're advising them to seek help. They know they're going through a lot in their life, and they might, and then I might say to them, well, the best way to do it is do it. So we do it in a group. So you invite mates in to do the training, and then all of a sudden, what's happening is we're normalizing the conversation for them, right? And they feel really good that their mates are actually getting involved. They're understanding about it, right? And everybody's better understanding about their situation, but we're not targeting them. You know what I mean? We're not targeting them. We're allowing sort of, to spread the conversation throughout the workplace and give them the tips and the tools to take with them as well, which is always a good thing.
That's awesome. Thanks, Brad. We've got another question here from Margaret. She's asked, do you have programs in Melbourne and do you visit for sites less than 20 people?
Yeah, we do sites less than 20 people, but unfortunately we're not in Melbourne yet.
No,
we're not. And there is a bit, I'm not going to get it right into the politics side, but we are talking with the CFMEU down there at the moment. They have another program called IncoLink. It's not the Mates program. So if you wanted to connect with IncoLink down there, that's fine, but it's definitely not our program. It's a bit different. I don't think it's evidence-based. Their training's a little bit different. Their reach is not as big as ours, but look, we're in discussions with industry down there, and we don't want to poke the bear that is the CFMEU, the construction union down there. So, and the way that Mates is set up, just so you know, it has employers and unions on our boards. But we're Switzerland. We sit right in the middle. We have to be absolutely independent in this role, and we don't get involved in industrial issues. But by having industry, you need industry to come with you. We can't do it on our own, and to have industry endorsement, you need both there. Mates has been around for a while. IncoLink came in not long after Mates. I think IncoLink had already started with people who were suffering from drug-impacted, alcohol-impacted issues, and then they lent in a little later on into the mental health aspect. But unfortunately, we're not down there yet. However, this is what we do. So if you wanted some training, we don't encourage to do the training on site. We wouldn't want to encourage an industrial issue with the union. We do, however, we'll talk to you about the possibility of being able to come down and do some training within a facility or whatever with your workforce. It would be, we're a charity, we're a registered charity. So, and by the way, registered charity, anybody else, has got any ideas to do fundraising or whatever. We had a big fundraiser yesterday for the Melbourne Cup that was put on by Moody Kittle and Partners, who's like a finance company within the construction industry. Amazing success, and it was wonderful. But if anybody's got any ideas for fundraising, we're open to that as well. But you would have to look at, the flights and accommodation, so travel and accommodation, because we are New South Wales based and we're probably the closest. We've got South Australia as well. So we're in South Australia, we're in WA, we're in Queensland, Northern Territory, and we're in New South Wales. We're not currently in the ACT. We are talking to the union about that as well. And we're not in Victoria or Tasmania currently. However,
that answers the second question, which was, do you run general awareness program in Tasmania? Which I'm assuming is no. It's the same as Melbourne. Open to it with travel.
We're open to have a look at what we can do, but we don't want to upset people. You know what I mean? Yeah. When you're playing Switzerland, it's really difficult. But we'll try that. But whilst we're on that point, I might talk about other industries. The Mates program now. Well, Mates in Construction New Zealand, magnificent, huge. It just grew exponentially simply because I think part of where they were is, the likes of Beyond Blue, Black Dog, Are You OK, Lifeline, all that. They didn't have that. There was a bit of a void. So they filled that void very quickly. Now they're now showing us how to do it, and they're amazing. So we connect with them as well. We're always talking to our brothers and sisters in New Zealand, and looking at what they're doing. But we're also now mates in mining, mates in energy, and we just in New South Wales completed a pilot for mates in manufacturing. So it's fairly generic what we do. I mean, obviously it has a industry flavour, and comprehensive reports in those other industries are not available currently. We're still looking to do some comprehensive reports. But, when we've found out pretty much what's going on within the construction industry, we can apply it to any. And we've been able to do that. So, yeah. So I just want to add that in as well.
Excellent. I think you answered this question at the beginning, but maybe you can add a little bit to it. Dean's asked if you offer anything via Zoom. So in those areas that you don't currently.
Not currently, no. We're looking at it.
Yeah.
We're looking at doing some online stuff, but not currently on Zoom, no. Because it is really difficult trying to control. Excuse me, I just had a sneeze. Thank you. Trying to look at, a safe way of doing it. And we've got to be honest, it's really difficult, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's obviously the topics that you're talking about can be quite emotional, and so I'm assuming that's why you guys prefer to do it in person.
Yeah.
The other one is there something we can share on social media to our friends and family, showing our genuine support for mates in construction and highlighting the importance of mental health, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got lots of socials. You can go to our social pages, and look, I'm an old Luddite. Worst person to ask about this stuff. I struggle with Facebook, to be quite honest. My sons are always giving it to me. But anyway, we have, obviously pages on Facebook, LinkedIn. We have, a number of socials. So, and if you can have a look at our website, and you can always do an inquiry over the website as well and connect with Hamish and Lisa and David Moody, our people who put together a lot of our stuff. So, by all means. And then I know one of our field officers here in New South Wales, Mark Finnegan, who he's really clever with social media. He does some good stuff. He's way better than me, this old Luddite. But no, he's fantastic. So, that'd be great. I mean, it all helps, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Putting out the positive messages.
And then, Luke's added to Bree's message. Is there some training or particular language and making sure we're putting out the right support content?
Yeah, look, around the language of suicide, just so you know, in the mental health space, it took me a long while to get this out of my vocabulary, but you don't say, someone has committed suicide. So they either died by suicide or they suicided, or, essentially we say that because commit conjures up, commit a crime, commit a sin, sometimes even committed to the act of suicide, which is not completely true. But we know that, some cultures, they don't even have a word in their language for suicide. It's their way of covering it up and getting rid of it. And culturally, suicide can be an issue. Some countries around the world still outlaw suicide. So you can be jailed if you attempt suicide, survive your suicide attempt. You can be jailed, right? So there's some things around the language we use we've got to be very careful, But I mean, it doesn't matter if people say commit suicide, right? Really. I mean, I don't use it, but because it's been stuck in our vocabulary for years, But there's other ways of being. Certainly, the way that we address people, we should never assume. That there's that thing. Sometimes it comes up in our training where they might say, "Oh, suicide's very selfish," right? Well, that's pretty hurtful to people who've lost somebody to suicide, right? So we do need to be a bit careful about the way we go about some of the stuff we say. And it's an interesting, when somebody raises that, by the way, in the training, it's good to get that out there and say, well, is it really? Let's have a talk about that, and we go through that point by point. But yeah, sort of the The language we use, we're careful about doing it. I mean, Safe Talk helps you do that, and Living Works has that program as well. We use the Safe Talk program and adapt it for the industry. Just on the point of getting back to the question around online sort of training. So you might want to go to Living Works. They have what they call a START program. That's online. They do that. We don't currently do that, but they do. So you might want to have a look at what they do. But yeah, no, the language around talking with someone with suicide is very important, and that's taught through our connector and our assist.
Excellent. Thanks, Brad. And then just a general comment from Stuart. It would have been when you were talking about where you currently have operations and why you don't have operations in that. And he just made a comment saying that, you know, it's small business owners that need assistance, not union members. So, yeah, obviously keep fighting the good fight on that one.
Yeah. So look, you know, I don't want to get into the politics. It's a bit disappointing, I'll be honest. And small bit and in spreading, we tend to spread ourselves a bit thin from time to time. I don't want to sort of give anybody the idea that we're able to just drop everything tomorrow and come and do the training. Our training's now out to March next year in New South Wales. If you think about just the big civil infrastructure projects that we've got going on, Sydney Metro, Western Sydney Airport, we've got other stuff going out regionally. The whole Mates program is consumed by that already. Right? That's not to say we don't get to the smaller blokes as well. We do, but we have to strategically sort of map out how we're going to do that. And obviously, you know, 70% of Mates funding in New South Wales comes from industry. So industry is more than pulling their weight about supporting the program. We get nothing currently from the New South Wales state government. We're in discussions and talks with them. So if anybody who's listening has got any influence with anyone, we're happy to take you on as an industry partner, or, you know, if you've got influence with anybody politically, that'd help as well. So we run on the smell of an oily rag really from time to time. But look, we're just about to secure a couple of more field officers, a couple of more boots on the ground, which is going to be a big help. We need to do that. We need to get more people out there because we can run the program out even further. And like I said earlier, what sets us apart from everybody else is that we're actually active on the ground. I sometimes, and I wouldn't bag out or name mobs, but sometimes you'll see that somebody's got a $6 million grant for producing a leaflet. You know what I mean? Like, really. But we're active and we're out there and we're giving it a go, and we're evidence-based, so we've got the runs on the board, and we're getting amongst it.
That's awesome. Is there any final questions from anyone? Given in the moment. That's that awkward 5 seconds, 10 seconds of silence, just in case someone's still typing. If you don't get the question in time, don't worry. We do get a transcript of the chat, so we can answer your question after the fact as well. If you are a Hazico member and something pops up after the fact, you can absolutely email us at info@hazico.com. And we can get back in touch with Brad to answer your question. And I, welcome anyone from Build Exact who may not be a Hazico member to also use that email address if they have any further questions or want to get in touch with Brad. I'm sure Brad is happy to have anyone call the 1300 number. So any inquiries that you have, like you said, you can go directly to the Mates in Construction website and place a email inquiry, or call the 1300 number and have a chat to and their attendants and see whether there are any programs local to you. If we have enough Hazico members in a locality that doesn't currently house Mates, Melbourne, for example, there's a possibility that we could talk to Brad and sort of join forces and have all of our members attend one central location and split the cost that way. Definitely reach out and be vocal around what you need and what support you're after. And we're here to help as well. So thanks so much for your time today, Brad. We know you're a busy person, so appreciate you, and your experience. Thanks to everyone who's saying thank you on the chat. Too many of you to mention all by name. But there's a couple of good recommendations in the chat there for everyone as well. So thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate your time. I know we're all busy, but this is such an important topic to discuss. And for those who, asked questions around how do you probe, how do you have conversations, just start simply by having a conversation. So having an environment, and this goes for safety as well. So it's whether it's psycho safety or social safety or just general well-being, it's about creating an environment where people feel comfortable in having a conversation. So, no question is a stupid question kind of mentality, and allowing everyone to enjoy their workspace and feel comfortable in their workspace will make it easier. So thanks so much, everyone. It's been a pleasure to host today. Thanks again, Brad. Thanks to all our members and to the Build Exact members on the call. And we appreciate you.
Look after your mates. Cheers.
Indeed. Bye, guys.
Bye.